Welcome back to our live Inauguration Day coverage. I'm Zinhle Essamuah. Washington, D.C. has been locked down this week in preparation for the inauguration due to fears of violence like we saw at the Capitol on January 6th. With me now is Representative Eleanor Holmes Norton, the House delegate for Washington, D.C. She's been pushing for D.C. statehood for years and has been gaining more and more support for the resolution. We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more. Thank you so much for joining me, Representative.
It's my pleasure.
So just to start, obviously, this is a historic day, so would love to just know, how are you doing? What's it been like in D.C.? How are you feeling?
Well, I must say it was an uneventful day, and yet it was a joyous day. Uneventful because all of the lockdowns here in the nation's capital, I've never seen anything like it, had its effect. I'm sorry for it. I think in one sense, it was overdone. But because the Capitol Police didn't do their work on January the 6th, you can see what had to be done. So that was the downside of it. The upside of it was not only the peacefulness of it, but the joyfulness of it as the ex-presidents, Democratic and Republican, came, as the president gave an uplifting speech, just as he had promised. So today lived up to its promise. I must say that I live on Capitol Hill, and the mayor got some patrol, some motorcycles to help me get through to the Capitol. So that gives you the part of it that I detest. And yet the other part of it, of course, is that it was necessary. As a result, I think we will see that kind of security taken down quite gradually, but almost right away.
Yeah, I had wanted to ask you more about that. I think it's really notable that you, as someone who's represented D.C. for so long, and obviously there's a lot of events that happen, inaugurations have happened in the past, but you're saying this is the most security you've seen. Do you think we'll continue to see such a high security presence? Was it a little extra in your opinion? Was it necessary given the context? What's your assessment?
I would like to see less security. I'd like to see that security go down gradually. We live in a locked down capital of the United States. And by the way, I should mention that as COVID recesses, it's going to become a tourist town. So I have economic reasons, as long as hometown reasons, for wanting this to recede. And I think the success of today will help it to recede. We saw a few scattered demonstrations. Some of them weren't even about this. There was a gun rights demonstration in Virginia. There was another demonstration by people who said they were against both Trump and Biden. So you already see the effects of the shutdown. So the overdoing of it may have had its effects after all. And because I represent the District of Columbia, I want us to get back to normal quick.
Yeah, and you referenced some of the counter protests that we saw today that were pretty small in size, a bit underwhelming. And I'm reminded of the Capitol riot and the fact that Eugene Goodman, who escorted Vice President Kamala Harris today, was one of the responding officers who's been hailed as a hero for leading these rioters away from lawmakers. Given what we've been learning about the attack and the involvement in some cases of some law enforcement and seemingly assisting members of the mob in getting into the Capitol, how do you feel as a member of Congress? Do you feel safe? Is enough being done to analyze the law enforcement force as well?
I must say I was shocked to find that there were Capitol Police or law enforcement officers, some of them from out of state, who actually stormed the Capitol, because I've also believed that was our first and our last line of defense. And so for what I believe is the first time ever, the police had to be vetted. And some of them were taken out of the line, those from out of state and perhaps elsewhere. So that tells us a lot, I think, about how our country has changed. I certainly hope the police will learn from this, officers will learn from this at a time when they've been under attack for other reasons as well. And that will reverberate not only with the Capitol Police and police here in the nation's capital, but across the United States.
Definitely. I think there's been a lot to reflect on and a lot of assessment that's been happening. And I want to now look ahead, right? We know that today, Vice President Kamala Harris just swore in the newest members of Congress, and Democrats have the upper hand. What do you think attainable policy changes are in the coming 100 days and just in the new session of Congress that we have?
We have no choice but to focus on the coronavirus, particularly considering how little this president did and what he's left us with. Easy things to have done, like at least encouraging masks. And you see the new president wants everybody to wear a mask for 100 days. You can't make everyone wear a mask. He's saying masks must be worn on federal properties. So that virus has to be the first thing to focus on. Of course, I want the president to focus on statehood for the District of Columbia too. And I don't think that's very hard because we already have enough co-sponsors to pass the bill. But I recognize that the economy that flows from what the virus has done to our country is perhaps the next most important thing that the president has to focus upon.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned statehood. I know that you've been a longtime advocate for D.C. statehood. We've heard President Joe Biden in the past express his support for that, and I know that more than 200 of your colleagues now have signed your resolution to provide statehood to the District of Columbia. Given all of that, and even some reports that we heard today that some of the license plates of the Biden administration's cars had taxation without representation on them, a common phrase used in the movement for D.C. statehood, knowing all of that, do you think statehood has a chance of passing now, especially when we consider, it didn't happen under the Obama administration? Will this be different? What's your take?
Well, I believe it has an even better chance now. You have every member of the Democratic member of the House, and we control the House. We control the Senate. We control the presidency, and we've just gotten 2 new senators from Georgia. They are for statehood. Now, any bill, I must say, far easier bills than D.C. statehood have had trouble getting through under the last administration. McConnell only let bills that having to do with judgeships from the president go through. And I don't underestimate that all bills going through have to get the House and the Senate, and that is always a problem. But most bills don't have the kind of support we have in the Senate, in the House. And I think we are going to get that kind of support in a Democratic Senate as well.
Yeah, and I think you're really highlighting the different makeup of Congress could make a big difference. I have been a longtime D.C. resident, and I think the topic of D.C. statehood can be kind of amorphous for people. They don't fully understand what it would look like to have a new, quote unquote, new state join the union. And so can you speak to what practically D.C. statehood means? I think of the Capitol riot and the fact that the mayor had trouble calling in the National Guard due to limitations that a mayor has versus a governor of a state. Can you talk to us about what would practically change for D.C. and its residents?
Actually, I have a bill that could have given the mayor control of the National Guard, so we wouldn't even need statehood for that. We do have home rule, but Congress has to get many of these bills passed anyway. Statehood would mean we wouldn't have to come to the Congress. And statehood would mean 2 senators for the district. That's the major effect, because I have most of the rights of any other member in the Congress, except that final vote on the House floor. I can chair a committee. I do chair a subcommittee. But it's 2 senators we lack. And that can make a difference in important bills.
Yes, and what do you say to critics who say that D.C. statehood might set a dangerous precedent to other regions and cities who are lobbying for more independence or who desire to break away from states to which they belong. What do you say to that critique?
That's rare. There's no real movement to break away from states, and no real argument against statehood, except the argument Republicans make that our 51st state would be a state that would be mostly Democratic. Well, I can tell you another thing. There are many states that are mostly Democratic. So why should that keep us from getting statehood? You can get statehood by majority vote.
Yeah, well, I think there's definitely going to be a lot of policy to follow and lots of news continuing to come out of D.C. So I thank you for making the time and for your advocacy around this issue as well.
My pleasure.
Well, thanks so much, and thanks everyone for tuning in. We've been speaking with Representative Norton. Again, this is Zinhle Essamuah. We are giving you all of the live inauguration coverage today. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and stay well.